Jai Radha Madhava ki. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Good morning. We're going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, Canto 2, chapter 4. We can chant the invocation together. It's up. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chant together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya mutirayet nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So chapter 4 is entitled The Process of Creation. Maharaj Parikshit is inquiring from Sukadev Goswami. And in this chapter, we're going to see that he's going to ask another question. So if we could quickly go around and read verses 1 through 10.
Sukadev Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Sukadev Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon the Lord, Krishna. Maharaj Parikshit, as a result of his wholehearted attraction for paragraph menu for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals, like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom.
O great sages, the great soul of Maharaja Pariksit, constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna, and asked all these questions exactly as you are asking me.
Maharaj Pariksit said, O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord.
I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods.
Finally, describe how the Supreme Lord, which is all-powerful, engages his different energies in different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player.
O learned Brahmana, the transcendental activities of the Lord are all wonderful, and they appear inconceivable because even great endeavors by many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding.
Two more.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature, or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature.
Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not the only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord, and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead.
On that verse. Yes. Vichikitsitam yetanme Ravitu Bhagavan Yatha Shabde Brahmani Nishnatha Parasmimsha Bhavan Khalu Vichikitsitam yetanme Bravitu Bhagavan Yatha Shabde Brahmani Nishnata Parasmimsha Bhavan Khalu Vichikitsitam yetanme Bravitu Bhagavan Yatha Shabde Brahmani Nishnatha Parasmimsha Bhavan Khalu. Would anyone like to recite? Vichikitsitam yetanme Ravitu Bhagavan Yatha Shabde Brahmani Nishnata Parasmimsha Bhavan Khalu. Vichikitsitam yetanme Bravitu Bhagavan Yatha Shabde Brahmani Nishnatha Parasmimsha Bhavan Khalu. Vichikitsitam yetanme Bravitu Bhagavan Yatha Shabde Brahmani Nishnatha Parasmimsha Bhavan Khalu. Okay, translation, we can read together. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned. Just kidding, start over. Ready? Okay. Together. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord, and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Wow.
It is said that the Supreme Absolute Truth, Govinda, the personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is infallibly expanded by innumerable forms non-different from one another. And although he is the original person, he is still ever young with permanent youthful energy. It is very difficult to know simply by learning the transcendental science of the Vedas, but is very easily realized by pure devotees. The expansions of different forms of the Lord, as from Krishna to Baladev to Sankarshan, Vasudev, Sura to Buddha, Manuruddha to Prabdumna, and then again to the second Sankarshan, from him to Narayan Purushavatars, and innumerable other forms which are compared to the constant flowing of the uncountable waves of a river, are all one and the same. They're like lamps of equal power which kindle from one lamp to another. That is the transcendental potency of the Lord. The Vedas say that he is so complete that even though the whole complete identity emanates from him, he still remains the same complete whole. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. As such, there is no validity in a material conception of the Lord used by the mental speculator. Thus, he remains always a mystery to the mundane scholar, even if he is vastly learned in the Vedic literature. Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakta. Therefore, the Lord is beyond the limit of conception. Philosopher and all is easily understandable for the body, for the Lord, that after surpassing the state of knowledge, that one is able to be embraced in service of the Lord, then only can one know the true nature of God. One cannot have any clear conception of the Lord or His holy name, form, attributes, pastimes, etc., unless one is engaged in His constant loving service. The statement of the Bhagavad Gita that one must press a false surrender unto the Lord, being freed from all other engagements, means that one must become a pure, unconditional devotee of the Lord. Only then can one know Him by the strength of devotional service.
Maharaj Parikshit admitted in the previous verse that the Lord is inconceivable even for the greatest learned scholars. Why then should he again request Shukadev Goswami to clarify his insufficient knowledge about the Lord? The reason is clear. Not only was Shukadev Goswami vastly learned in the Vedic literatures, but he was also a great self-realized soul and a powerful devotee of the Lord. A powerful devotee of the Lord is, by the grace of the Lord, more than the Lord himself. The personality of Godhead, Sri Ramachandra, attempted to bridge the Indian Ocean to reach the island of Lanka, but Sri Hanumanji, the unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead, could cross the ocean simply by jumping over it. The Lord is so merciful upon his pure devotee that he presents his beloved devotee as more powerful than himself. The Lord expressed himself to be unable to save Durvasha Muni, although the Muni was so powerful that he could reach the Lord directly under material conditions. But Durvasha Muni was saved by Maharaj Ambarish, a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, not only is a devotee of the Lord more powerful than the Lord, but also worship of the devotee is considered more effective than the direct worship of the Lord. Madbhakta Jabhadyadika.
The conclusion is, therefore, that a serious devotee must first approach a spiritual master who not only is well versed in the Vedic literatures, but is also a great devotee with factual realization of the Lord and his different energies. Without the help of such a devotee spiritual master, one cannot make progress in the transcendental science of the Lord, and a bona fide spiritual master like Sukadeva Goswami does not speak about the Lord only in the matter of his internal potencies, but also explains how he associates with his external potencies.
The Lord's pastimes in the eternal potency are displayed in his activities in Vrindavan, but the workings of his external potency are directed in his features of Karanas Vasya Vishnu and the Garbhaloka Ya Vishnu and the Shridas Kasai Vishnu. Srila Visadatakor. No, who's that? Srila Vishwanath Chakranath offers his good counsels to the interested Vaishnavas when he says that they should not be interested in hearing only about the Lord's activities like Rasa Leela, but must be keenly interested in his pastimes and his features of the Purana Sarvasartas in connection with the Shriti Tava creational functions. Following the examples of Maharaj Parikshit, the ideal disciple, and Sukadev Goswami, the ideal spiritual master.
I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, with his expansive compassion, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my life in service to him. Okay, so we're starting this chapter with Sutta Goswami talking to the sages about what Maharaj Parikshit asked. So 2.4.6, Maharaj Parikshit asks, I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. So he's asking about the process of creation. So why is this important? Why do we have to know about the process of creation, right? Like when we have bhakti, we can just, why is it that we can't just listen to Raslila all day or the more intimate pastimes of the Lord? Well, it's only when one knows Lord Krishna's greatness can one firmly put one's unflinching faith in him. So if you're bleeding out on the floor and someone comes rushing up to you and they say, I'm a doctor, hopefully they have credentials, you know, you won't be able to trust them unless they have the credentials of a doctor. So knowing the greatness of the Lord can bring us closer to him because we'll develop faith in him. Srila Prabhupada also says in the purport that those who are under the control of the external energy of the Lord, or in other words, those who are in the material world must first of all know how the external energy of the Lord is working under the direction of the Supreme Personality, and afterwards one may try to enter into the activities of his internal energy. So first of all, we must understand that all of the external conditionings, everything that's happening to us is actually under the control of one person. And when we realize that Krishna is the master of the material energies, we naturally turn to him when we are in distress. And then another point is that how can we understand someone when we don't know anything about them? And how can we love someone when we don't understand them? And then how can we surrender to someone if we don't love them? The whole point of Krishna consciousness, we say all the time, is surrender unto Krishna, surrender unto Krishna. But, well, first of all, how can we surrender if we don't understand someone? And then if we don't love them, and if we don't love them, if we don't understand them, then we can't love them. And then we can't understand them if we know nothing about them. So first, we must understand who they are, and then we can love them, and then we can surrender unto them. So that's why it's so important to know about the external energies of the Lord. So, okay, now we realize that it's really important to understand the creative energies of the Lord because then we can surrender unto him. So how do we do that? Surrendering unto the Lord is the only way by which we can perform pure devotional service. If you haven't surrendered unto the Lord, then you can't do pure devotional service, which is the only way that spiritual knowledge will be revealed in our hearts. So it said in the purport that spiritual knowledge is not like material knowledge. Spiritual knowledge has to be realized within the heart. And that can only happen when we surrender and perform devotional service unto the Lord. Then he becomes pleased and reveals the knowledge in our hearts. So the only way that we can learn about something so unlimited is through that unlimited source itself, or by someone who's been given understanding about the unlimited by the unlimited. So in this case, the unlimited is Krishna. We can understand Krishna when Krishna himself speaks, so through the Bhagavad Gita, or someone who has been given understanding about Krishna, so a bona fide spiritual master. We must find someone who has realized knowledge about the nature and activities of the Lord. And so here's an analogy. Just like a vocational school might empower a technician with knowledge about his trade, the Lord empowers his devotees with the knowledge needed to come back home to him. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, all inquiries on God which are unknown to the disciple may be made from the qualified spiritual master. So how important is the Guru? Well, actually in this verse, Parikshit Maharaj actually addressed Sukadev Goswami as Bhagavan. So this demonstrates the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy. We as living entities are the same as the Lord in quality. So in our uncovered state, so our souls are Sat Chit Ananda, they're eternal, blissful, and full of eternal knowledge. However, just as a drop of the ocean has the same chemical composition as the ocean, it is minuscule compared to the vastness of the ocean. So if I were to take a drop of ocean water and put it under a microscope, it's going to have the same chemical compositions on a smaller scale of what's in the ocean, right? But it's not, you cannot say that the drop of water is the ocean because the ocean is vast. But the thing with the drop of the ocean is that it's more merciful than the ocean. You can't go into the midst of the ocean and swim. You're probably going to drown. The ocean is very unforgiving. But a drop of ocean water, that's not going to do you much harm, right? If anything, it's like harmless. It's non-threatening. So in this way, and in the purport, we just said that Srila Prabhupada gave some examples of how the devotees are actually more merciful than Krishna himself. We heard with Ambarish Maharaj how he was able to forgive Durvasa Muni, even though Durvasa Muni approached the Lord and the Lord said, no, I'm not able to forgive you. You have to go ask Ambrish Maharaj. So Ambrish Maharaj. Then Draupadi with Ashwadhama. So Draupadi, she has 5 sons, and they're killed in their sleep by Ashwadhama. And when Krishna and Arjun bring Ashwadhama in front of her, Krishna and Arjuna are saying, like, you need to kill him. He went against the rules of war and he killed innocent people during their sleep. This is atrocious. You kill him. But actually, Draupadi was unable to do so. She said that I know what it's like to lose a son. I'm to a mother, and I don't want his mother to know that pain of losing a child. So she ends up forgiving him. And then we see with Hanumanta, he's able to cross a huge ocean with a leap because he's empowered. He went to Lanka and saved Mother Sita by setting the whole place on fire with his tail. One time when someone asked him to prove that in his heart Ramchandra was there, he literally tore open his heart, and then you could see the Ram Parivar inside his heart. So, and Jesus Christ, when he was being, vilified, he actually asked God to forgive those who sinned against him. And then another example is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is known as Nataraj, or the god of dance. And he learns the art of destructive dance because he does tandav at the end of the material world. He does a dance and then the material world is destroyed. So he learns this dance when he looks at the movement of Krishna's eyes when he's dancing on Kaliya. So Krishna's dancing on Kaliya, and Lord Shiva sees how Krishna's eyes move, and that's how he learns to dance, and then he becomes the Lord of Dance. So these inconceivable activities of the devotees, how are they possible? Well, the Lord empowers them. The Lord reveals himself in their hearts. So when you have a pure devotee who Krishna has revealed in their heart who he is and their eternal connection with them, they then in turn become our connection with the Lord, because we, Krishna has not revealed himself to us yet. So we have to find someone who he has revealed himself to. And that is why Shukadev Goswami was the ideal spiritual master and Parikshit Maharaj was the ideal disciple. Shukadev Goswami gave importance to all energies of the Lord, the external, the internal, the marginal. He talked about all of them. And that's why he was perfect. And the disciple, Parikshit Maharaj, was ideal because he learned with a humble and submissive mood. And this is really important. When we perform devotional service unto a pure devotee and humbly learn from them, this is how we progress. So that's why Shukadev Goswami was the ideal spiritual master, and Parikshit Maharaj was the ideal disciple. And an interesting point that I heard when I was listening to a lecture: the devotees get pleasure while glorifying the Lord, while the Lord gets pleasure while glorifying the devotees who have stolen his heart. So, wow, how important is a pure devotee? And many devotees have witnessed the miracles that a pure devotee has performed in their own lives as well. So in the beginning of class, we mentioned that surrender is what allows us to perform devotional service, which in turn will lead to realized knowledge. So we surrender, then we perform devotional service, and then we get realized knowledge. So when do we surrender? How do we surrender? So we surrender when we realize that it is solely the mercy of the devotees and the Lord that can solve our problems. Then we start to take shelter of him as the supreme controller, maintainer, and annihilator. So this topic of surrender comes up a lot in this verse, because if we don't surrender, again, no realized knowledge. So surrender is actually a very practical thing. It's not mere sentiment. It's something that we we show up for Krishna in our relationship with him. It's a very practical thing. So sometimes it happens that our external conditions may be hellish and they cause us to suffer. And the human tendency is to take our own shelter. Oftentimes we say, okay, well, this time is different. I'm a better person than I was back then. I'm going to try again. Surely I can figure this out. And actually this forces us into a deeper suffering. So what's the remedy? You can get out of suffering if you simply change your consciousness. All suffering is caused by a lack of knowledge. In the name of becoming the master of the material world, we have become servants of our senses, lust, envy, greed, and anger. So quote by Srila Prabhupada. So what does that mean? Well, even in our external conditions and internal suffering, we should see Krishna as our savior and render service unto him. We should understand that his mercy will flow in due time. We offer our complicated and broken hearts to him, our baggage, our skills, everything that we have. And through our service, we let him take the wheel as Parthasarathi and seek his shelter. And this is what Krishna wants. This is how Krishna is pleased. And there's a couple of examples of that I'd like to talk about. First, Prahlad Maharaj. We know the story of Prahlad. Prahlad was a mere 5 years old when he was rejected by his father, and he gets thrown into a snake pit. So the snakes, can kill him because his father gets angry. And so he throws him into a snake pit. He doesn't die. He gets thrown off of a cliff. He doesn't die. He gets thrown into fire and he doesn't die. It's because he takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so why is it that when Nrsimhadev came, he came specifically for Prahlad? He incarnated himself into a new incarnation just for a 5-year-old boy. Why did he do that? It's because Prahlad never forgot Krishna. He was suffering, he remembered Krishna. He was happy while he was in school, he remembered Krishna. No matter his situation, no matter what he wanted, all he wanted was to be protected and saved. And he thought of Krishna during those times. That's why Krishna came. Same thing with Dhruv Maharaj. Dhruv Maharaj passed on. Dhruv Maharaj was also rejected by his father, more so his stepmother, who said, "You can't sit on your father's lap because you weren't born from me, and so therefore you don't deserve your father's love." And so Dhruv Maharaj goes into the forest, and he's also like 5 or 6 years old. He goes into the forest and he prays. He prays very fervently to Krishna, not to ask for liberation or anything like that. He just asks, "Give me a kingdom that's bigger than my father's, so that I can prove that I'm capable, that I'm worthy." And so this desire, even though it could be seen as material, he turned to Krishna with that desire. And so that's why Krishna came and awarded him with more than what he asked for. And then Hanuma, there's a story in the Ramayana that demonstrates this point really nicely as well. So one time, Sita Devi is sitting in a garden, and she has just finished adorning herself. And the last thing that she does is take sindoor, or like red, and it's like a reddish orange paste, and she puts it in the part of her hair. And Hanuma, who's also there, notices, and he goes up to her and he goes, "Mother Sita, what is this that you're putting on your forehead? Why do you put it there?" And Mother Sita is thinking, okay, well, this is a brahmachari. How he's not going to understand the nature of the relationship between a husband and a wife. What am I supposed to tell him? So then she says, "Oh, I do this to please Lord Ram." And he goes, "Oh, so Lord Ram is pleased if you put this reddish orange paste on your forehead?" And she goes, "Yeah, he's pleased, and it protects him in times of danger." And so Hanuma goes and he smears his entire body with this sindoor. He's glowing orange now. And so he comes into assembly where Sri Ramachandra and Lakshmana and everyone is sitting there having these great big talks. And Hanuma walks in and they don't recognize him, this weird orange monkey. And so they, the soldiers come to kill him. And Ramchandra's like, no, wait, this looks like Hanuma." And then he asks, "Hanuma, what are you doing? Like, why do you look like this?" And Hanuma says, "Oh, well, Mother Sita told me that you're pleased when we apply sindoor, so I put it all over my body." So you see, like, and who are we talking about? We're talking about, Buddhir Bhalam Yashodhairyam Nirbhavatya Arogatam Ajaryam Vakpatitvancha Hanumat Smaranad Bhavet. Just by thinking of Hanuma, we develop the qualities of fearlessness, courage, strength, intelligence, graceful appearance, productivity, skillful speech, and good health. This great personality had this childlike innocence about him and came in front of the Lord and offered whatever he has, offered himself fully. And so we should also rely on Krishna like a child in the womb relies on its mother. Child in the womb doesn't have much consciousness. It doesn't control much of its life. All of its sustenance comes from its mother. Anything that it excretes from its body, taken care of by the mother. Vitamin deficiencies, mother. Needs to sleep, mother. Every need that it has is reliant on its mother. And so we should also pray in this way. So I wanted to read something from Shikshashtakam. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he came, he only wrote 8 verses. And those 8 verses, the compilation of those 8 verses is known as Shikshashtakam. So one of the verses is, Lord Krishna, who is the lover of many devotees, women, may embrace this fully surrendered maidservant, or may trample me with his feet, or he may render me broken-hearted by not being present before me for a long duration of time, but still he is nothing less than the absolute Lord of my heart. So no matter whatever condition like Krishna puts before us, he's still our worshipable Lord and Savior. So the lesson in this verse is that if we are chaste and loyal to our best friend, Sri Krishna, take shelter of his devotees, and perform uninterrupted and unalloyed devotional service, we will be eligible to enter into the internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the biggest lesson. And I want to go back and talk a little bit about your experiences with devotees. Have you witnessed any miracles? Like what does a pure devotee mean to you? Like what have they brought into their lives, into your life? So I want to, or if anyone has anything to share. Yeah, like just any stories that you might have about how a pure devotee has impacted your life. Most memorable. Yeah.
Haribol. The first thing that comes to mind, what is the question of like, what's the difference between a pure devotee and a regular devotee? But I just want to share experience, like the first experience where a devotee empowered me very strongly. It's my god uncle. His name's Grudadas, and I was in my mid-20s, and I was ready to start like strongly back on the spiritual path and revisit Krishna consciousness again from my childhood. And he was like, "Yeah, get in the van. We're going to Alachua, and we're gonna go set up a big like festival out there on some devotees' properties." And on the way there, he was like, just asking me how I was doing. Like, are you chanting rounds? Are you reading Bhagavad Gita? And I was like, yeah, I started on that stuff. And he was like, are you a vegetarian? I was like, almost. I'm a pescatarian right now. I'm eating chicken and eggs. And he said, okay, you need to be a vegetarian like right now. And after he said that, like, I never eat meat. You know what I mean? And I just remembered, I was like, it's just, him saying that in my mind removed that one of those obstacles in order for me to get into some regulations just by his words. But yeah, my question is like, what's a pure devotee compared to just like a devotee who's in 100% service to the Lord? And then also what your thoughts are on the school of thought that like Prabhupada was the only pure devotee, and there's no other devotees that were as pure-hearted as him, and that's who we just need to go to and to our spiritual masters. They're just representatives of him.
Yeah, and senior devotees can correct me if I'm wrong. But a pure devotee doesn't reveal himself always. A pure devotee doesn't, go around talking about like the intimate pastimes of the Lord, this, that, and the other thing. It's not a cheap thing. So sometimes we don't know like who the pure devotees are. It's said that like in Kali Yuga, demigods will come and walk amongst us, as to be able to chant the Lord's holy name, because that's a benediction that we have in Kali Yuga. So like we cannot always see pure devotees amongst our midst. So it's best to treat all devotees with respect and consider them to be a pure devotee, because sometimes you just don't know. And in terms of like Srila Prabhupada being the only pure devotee, I haven't heard that before. Srila Prabhupada is our ultimate shelter in terms of Krishna conscious movement and in terms of like Vani Seva, but it's important to take shelter of devotees who still walk amongst us, because Srila Prabhupada may talk to us and we can't hear him. So it's really important to take shelter of devotees that are walking amongst us right now. It's very important to have those shelters. So
I'd like to share some experiences with devotees blessing me in my life, but before that, I'd also like to respond to Jonathan's question. Maybe you said you've never heard anyone say that. Maybe he's representing or sharing what you might hear sometimes in like Ritvik circles and so forth. And as you very nicely stated, Prabhupada undoubtedly has a very unique and special and elevated position. And all of us have to make sure that we keep going deeper in our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. But at the same time, if you're saying that there's no other pure devotees, you're basically bringing into question Prabhupada's potency, his Shakti. And you're in effect saying that Prabhupada couldn't make any pure devotees, which is a ludicrous statement. And I mean, I won't go on. I'm not going to give examples because I feel like this is actually a silly topic in general. Not, it's it can be an offensive topic, so it's not worth going into the details and trying to defend different devotees. But each of us, if we just put in a little bit of effort, we can easily see that there are so many very advanced devotees, Prabhupada's disciples and others, grand disciples. But at the same time, Prabhupada has a very special position. And then examples from my own life. Two examples that are very similar. I used to run a preaching project with two other devotees. We were a bigger team, but the three of us were kind of in charge. And every year, like clockwork, two of them would, at the latter half of the year, disappear to India for long periods of time. We're going to the Polish tour. So I would be alone and responsible for our project for some months every year. And I remember once, I'd only known Mahatma Prabhu a little bit at that point, but I think I just asked him something about our preaching. What do you think? What I should do with a particular program or something? And he literally immediately phoned me. He was so excited. He was like a child, you could say. And he just wanted to speak, and it was like an outpour of suggestions and enthusiasm, giving me tips and ideas. And I think we had more than one phone call like that. And the other example is Kadamakarna Swami. At the end of a December book marathon, he was the one handing out certificates and so forth. So I also came up and handed my certificate, and I'll never forget the look that he had in his eyes, and his whole demeanor communicated so much. I think the only words he spoke were something like, "Thank you," or something like that. His eyes and his whole, everything he was expressing communicated so much about how he was genuinely grateful for my humble attempts at service. So the point I'm trying to make is that these advanced devotees, these pure devotees, one of the greatest things I think that they give us is their genuine enthusiasm and appreciation for our attempts at devotional service. Basically, it means they're pleased. You can say they're enthusiastic, or you can say they're pleased, or they're happy, they're grateful, but they're feeling something positive, and that is automatically a blessing upon our lives. And of course, with that, it also means that they're rooting for us, and they're thinking of us, they're praying to Krishna for us, for our sake. So that's one of my favorite ways in which to touch on.
Bruce, yes.
I don't know about like the technicalities between pure devotees and regular devotees, but devotees in general have done a lot for me. Devotees have given me counseling, guidance. They've listened to me, gave me feedback, and like genuinely actually listened to me, which is something I needed. So yeah.
Max?
A couple quick notes on to Jonathan's point. One, everyone's actually a pure devotee originally in their constitutional position, just been embodied in these contaminated material bodies, so we forget. So, but if we go back to Vaikuntha, we're all pure devotees at the end of the day. When we choose to wake up to that notion, we're just contaminated right now because we're not fully aware of that yet. But one thing that I've heard a few times from different people is that you can determine the quality of a devotee by the quality of his disciples. So if you look at Srila Prabhupada, like the defense is already there that he's produced so many amazing disciples. You could name them all day, Mahatma Prabhu, Radhanath Swami, all these amazing people, and someone could say, well, what about the bad ones? What about the people who aren't good devotees that, did sinful things after Prabhupada initiated them and stuff like that? And it's like, well, you could blame the teacher for not getting a good grade in class, but if you didn't show up to class, you didn't do the homework, you didn't participate, you didn't ask questions, that's not the teacher's fault you didn't pass, that's your fault. So it's not Prabhupada's fault that some people fell and became not good devotees anymore. That's their fault. Prabhupada gave them the direction, just like Krishna gave Arjuna direction in Bhagavad Gita, and he's like, it's up to you to decide for yourself. So, yeah. So, in regards to
Class by Max.
pretty much, yeah, right. But in regards to devotees helping me, I had a really, really scary dream probably about a year ago, back when I was in Denver, Colorado. And I was so afraid to do anything but chant. I woke up at like 2 o'clock that morning, just chanting, because I was so afraid if I'd stop, like some demon would come and take me away or something. So it was like 3:30 in the morning in the Ishkan Temple in Denver. Mongol Aarti's 4:30. So I was like, all right, if I could just get to the Mongol Aarti and I can see Mother Nidra. Mother Nidra's a Prabhupada disciple, right, in Denver. She stays at the Denver Temple as the ashram. She wears white there. So I was like, if I could just see Mother Nidra and talk to her about what this dream was, she'll help me clear up my fear. So at 4:15, I start driving to the temple, and I get there, and I'm like, oh, Hare Krishna in the car too, because I just I didn't want to stop. And I got there, and I just saw Mother Nidra. I didn't even have to talk to her. I was like, oh my God, okay, everything's good. And then I was dating a girl for a while that she had nightmares all the time. And I said, you need to talk to Mother Nidra. So she talks to Mother Nidra, and all Mother Nidra said is, sing the Nisringadev prayer every night before bed, you'll be okay. She didn't have nightmares anymore.
To share something that Nishta sent. She's listening online, so she just wanted to. She just wanted to share something with regards to how pure devotees have helped her. Very similar to what Bruce and Gopi have said. The pure devotee really just they just have like your best interest at heart. They just want what's best for you. So she said, I'm just gonna read it in like first person. Pure devotees have given me the encouragement, guidance, and support I needed in my spiritual life. By trying to please these devotees and consequently the Lord, I have never felt more enlivened and fulfilled in my life.
Does anyone else want to share? Okay. So then, on that note, pure devotees, your representatives and instruments of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I ask that you please forgive me for any mistakes or offenses that I have committed. I hope you're pleased with the words that I have spoken today. Or if the devotees are pleased, then Krishna is pleased. Yes. I thought you. Okay. No, if there's something else, please add. Okay. Any takeaways? Something? A meditation? I have rounds left, so I'd like to hear some meditative things.
The question of how have devotees blessed us is such a beautiful question, and it's almost hard to like pinpoint specific devotees because it's like sometimes they do it discreetly and sometimes it's a combination of a lot of devotees who, without even knowing, bring us closer to Krishna.
Devotees can change the whole trajectory of our life. They give us a new purpose. Everything really is like a rebirth.
Yeah, that definitely happened to me. Like before I came to Krishna consciousness, I wanted to be like a Western doctor, go to med school and all that. And then I don't know, Krishna consciousness made me realize that career should not be the most important thing in my life. Well, not even just that. It made me just a little more aware of my true motives of like, oh, you're doing this because you want money and prestige. And then that's not going to bring you any happiness. So,
Yep. Yeah.
To that point about career and finishing school and everything, I believe there were a lot of devotees when Prabhupada was here in the States that were like, oh, forget it, I'm not going to finish school, I'm not going to get my degree, I'm going to leave my job so I can engage in Prabhupada's service full time. And Prabhupada didn't always want that for people. Like there is one example of an attorney who he was going to law school to pass the bar exam, become an attorney. But he's like, nah, I'm dropping out. I'm going to be Prabhupada's disciple full time. So he dropped out, but then he ended up falling and he stopped being a devotee for a long time. Like 10 years later, he ended up getting his degree anyways and finishing that path to become an attorney. So it's like, kind of an example of Arjuna. It's like if Krishna gives you this responsibility, it's not your call to give it up. Just try and dovetail it with how Krishna wants it. So you don't need to become like the most opulent, renowned doctor in the whole entire world, but you can see people as, oh, these are spirit souls of Krishna. God, he engaged me in healing people. That's my skill. That's my superpower, if you will, and I can do that for him as a service to him. Over and above just chanting and deity worship and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Use your occupation as a service.
We have to take into consideration our psychophysical nature, and that's something that like mentors can help us with. Like, what's our nature? What will we like feel fulfilled doing? How will it fit into our life? What are our values? How do we want our future life to look? Like all of these questions. It's so important to have a mentor. So.
Yeah, Prabhupada wasn't against higher education. He said if we get members in high places in society, would make our movement very strong. And also, I read that in a book. I don't, some kind of letter or something. I don't know what book, but I also heard that preaching to college students like preaching to 10 people or something like that.
Preaching what?
Preaching to a college student is like preaching to 10 regular people. He wasn't against higher education. It's just, he called it a slaughterhouse education, which it is, but if you see it through Prabhupada's eyes, then it can be useful.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki Srila Prabhupada ki
Really?